What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was a story half told? We've been taught that civilization began in Greece and reached perfection in Rome, that law, architecture, and culture were gifts delivered by a single empire. But history, like light through water, bends around the edges, revealing truths hidden beneath the surface. Long before Rome's first brick touched Italian soil, kingdoms thrived on the mysterious shores of the Black Sea. This is their story. The story of empires that predated Rome, that shaped the world before anyone ever called it civilized. Rome's grandeur has long cast a shadow over the past. Its legions marched across continents, its laws spread across nations, and its marble monuments became symbols of what the world should remember. But shadows conceal as much as they reveal. Beneath Rome's triumph lay the voices of entire civilizations silenced, not by time, but by narrative. History has always been written by the victors, and Rome conquered memory as skillfully as it conquered lands. Every story told in textbooks, every legacy etched in stone, favored Rome, leaving the names of others to fade into obscurity. Yet long before the legions marched, the Black Sea was alive with commerce, diplomacy, and culture. Its waters were arteries of trade, connecting Europe to Asia, carrying gold, honey, wine, and stories across distant shores. Along its coasts rose thriving kingdoms, Thrace, Colchis, Scythia, whose names remain unfamiliar to most, yet whose influence shaped civilizations. These were not primitive tribes. They were nations of engineers, metallurgists, and artists, whose technologies and rituals rivaled anything Rome would later claim as its own. Their cities were hubs of innovation, their societies complex and enduring. The so-called Roman filter has long shaped how we see the past. Archaeology favored Rome, textbooks praised its achievements, and the world was taught that civilization began with conquest. But the Black Sea's kingdoms were already civilizations in their own right, masters of trade, of governance, and of spiritual and artistic expression. Goldwork from Scythian tombs dazzles with sophistication. Thracian sanctuaries whisper the same rituals that would later inspire Greek festivals. Colchian metallurgy transformed rivers into treasure troves, birthing myths that would echo in Greek legends of the Golden Fleece. Yet, because they did not record history in Latin or Greek, their voices were drowned beneath empire. Today, their relics lie scattered across Europe, mislabeled or hidden, plaques reading unknown origin, Black Sea region, as if the world itself has forgotten. But these were the architects of early connectivity, the first to bind distant cultures through trade, art, and religion. Rome inherited these innovations, sometimes unknowingly, often deliberately repackaging them as its own. The roads, the swords, the philosophies, all bore the fingerprints of civilizations the world had almost erased. The true power of history is not in conquest, but in story. Rome conquered lands, but it conquered imagination. By controlling narrative, it made itself the measure of all things, relegating others to footnotes. Yet beneath the soil and beneath the silence, evidence remains. Temples, tools, jewelry, and even DNA reveal a world far more interconnected than the Roman-centric story allowed. These civilizations were influenced by Africa, the Near East, and the Eurasian steppes, a web of culture and technology flowing freely before Rome could claim dominion. The Black Sea shimmered with life. Empires trading, creating, worshipping, and expanding ideas. Their art spoke of beauty, their gold of mastery, their rituals of spirituality older than the myths of Jupiter or Mars. And yet, the world turned its gaze to Rome, forgetting that these peoples were the true predecessors, the ones who shaped the stage on which empires would dance. It is time to remember. to strip away the shadow cast by Rome and recognize the brilliance that came before it. Long before marble kissed sunlight in Italy, the Black Sea rang with power, invention, and art. Its winds carried ships that bore ideas across continents. Its shores nurtured kingdoms whose innovations would ripple through history. Civilization was never a tale of one empire, but a tapestry of many, and the Black Sea's empires are its first, brightest threads. This is where our journey begins, at the crossroads of forgotten empires, where the currents of trade, culture, and ambition converged long before Rome wrote its story. The voices of the past are rising again, and it is time to listen. Long before Rome's legions carved roads across Europe, ships already danced across the restless waters of the Black Sea. Their sails caught winds that would later propel empires. But their journeys were older, their ambitions no less grand. Between the golden plains of Scythia, the fertile valleys of Thrace, and the mountain coastal stretches of Colchis, civilizations rose, traded, and thrived. The Black Sea was not a distant frontier. It was a heartbeat of human connection, a crossroads where continents met and civilizations intertwined. Merchants from the Caucasus brought furs, metals, and amber. Traders from Anatolia carried wine, olive oil, and precious stones. Each harbor, each port became a node in an expansive web of exchange, a network that centuries later would inspire Greek colonies and Roman conquests. These coastal cities, Dioscurias, Olbia, Apollonia, were more than mere settlements. They were centers of diplomacy, culture, and commerce, proof that power often grows from networks, not just swords. Wealth flowed, ideas spread, and cultures intermingled, creating a foundation of prosperity that Rome would later inherit. Unaware of its predecessors, to the north, the Scythians ruled the steppes, their mastery of horse and bow making them the fastest and most elusive power in the ancient world. They controlled vast grazing lands, linking tribes through shared culture, language, and ritual. Their nomadic lifestyle was a symphony of movement. Cities may have been rooted in stone, but power for the Scythians rode on the wind. They exchanged horses for metals, furs for amber, and in doing so, created a currency of influence that traversed continents. Their gold, crafted with intricate designs, was not only wealth but art, a spiritual expression of identity and belief that would echo in civilizations to come. Southward, Thrace unfolded between mountains and rivers, a bridge connecting Europe to the Black Sea. Thracian cities flourished along fertile plains, developing governance systems, temples, and social hierarchies. Their artistry, from metalwork to textile weaving, was sophisticated and widely traded. Festivals celebrated the divine and the mundane alike. Music filled amphitheaters, and ritual dictated civic life. Thrace taught the early world that civilization was as much about cultural sophistication as military conquest. Its influence would ripple through Greek mythology and later Roman culture, yet centuries of Western historiography minimized its role. On the eastern coast, Colchis glimmered with legend. Its rivers carried gold, shaping the myth of the Golden Fleece. But the reality was even more remarkable. Colchians developed early techniques to extract gold from riverbeds, crafting tools and ornaments that were unmatched in precision. Their cities, perched between rugged mountains and the sea, became hubs of metallurgy and trade, linking distant civilizations with wealth and knowledge. They traded not only gold, but also medicine, astronomy, and ritual knowledge, passing on intellectual inheritance that would eventually permeate Mediterranean thought. Together, these kingdoms formed a network that was unprecedented in scale and complexity. Trade was not simply about commodities, It was about ideas. Languages, religious practices, and technologies flowed across the Black Sea, creating a cultural tapestry woven over centuries. Kings, priests, merchants, and artisans all participated in this grand exchange. Civilization did not spring from a single city. It emerged from connections, a lesson that would only be recognized millennia later by those who studied the remnants of these lost empires. Greek explorers arrived to find not wilderness, but thriving hubs of commerce. They admired the ports, copied metallurgical techniques, and integrated foreign ideas into their own society. Rome, following centuries later, inherited this same legacy, often unaware of the brilliance that had preceded its conquests. Roads, military tactics, art, and even festivals were built upon foundations laid by the peoples of the Black Sea. What Rome would call its genius was, in truth, a continuation of a far older story. Archaeology today confirms what historians once dismissed. Amphorae, gold ornaments, and ancient tools reveal cities that were sophisticated, interconnected, and resilient. Evidence of trade reaching Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond shows that the Black Sea's influence was global. Its civilizations were masters of both material and social wealth, proving that human progress is rarely linear, often circular, and always shared. The Black Sea's legacy is not written in conquest alone. It is written in collaboration, ingenuity, and exchange. Its waves still carry whispers of kingdoms that predated Rome, whose wealth, ideas, and culture shaped the foundation of the Mediterranean world. The power of the Black Sea lay in connection, not domination. A lesson that would resonate across centuries, from Scythian steppes to Roman forums. Before Rome, before Greece, before the legacies celebrated in Western textbooks, the Black Sea thrived. Its kingdoms taught the world that prosperity, innovation, and civilization are born where people meet, trade, and share knowledge, not only where swords conquer. And in the echoes of its waves, the first lessons of human unity endure, waiting for those willing to listen. They were called barbarians, savage horsemen, primitive tribes without temples or law. That's what Rome and later historians said. But labels are easy. Truth is more complex. Long before Rome forged its legions, these peoples had already mastered the art of civilization. The Scythians ruled the steppes with unparalleled mobility. The Thracians shaped culture and myth in the hills of Europe. The Colchians mined rivers for gold, transforming nature into legend. Together, they created a triangle of influence whose echoes would ripple through history. Yet, for centuries, their story was buried under conquest and misrepresentation. The Scythians were children of the wind and the grass, born to roam vast steppes stretching from the Black Sea to the edges of Central Asia. Their empire was not defined by stone walls or cities, but by movement. A Scythian warrior's throne was the saddle, his kingdom the horizon. They perfected the composite bow, capable of piercing armor from a distance, centuries before Rome's legions could field such weapons. Swift, strategic, and invisible in the tall grasses, their cavalry transformed warfare. They did not merely fight, they commanded the art of motion, turning the very landscape into an ally. But the Scythians were more than warriors. They were artisans, shamans, and visionaries. Burial mounds revealed treasures of gold so intricate that modern craftsmen still struggle to replicate them. Animals carved in jewelry, lions, stags, serpents, symbolized the eternal cycle of life and death. Horses were buried alongside kings, reflecting the spiritual and practical bond between rider and mount. Shamans guided communities, healed the sick, and communicated with the unseen, blending ritual and strategy into a holistic way of life. Power for the Scythians was as much spiritual as it was military. Southward, the Thracians thrived in valleys and mountains, a people of fertile lands and fierce independence. Greeks described them as wild, but their influence on European culture was profound. Thracian music, ecstatic dances, and ritual celebrations inspired the very fabric of Greek theater and festival traditions. They worshipped the divine through song and movement, embodying a philosophy where joy, chaos, and reverence were intertwined. Their kings built tombs deep in hills, adorned with murals of their passage to the afterlife. More than graves, gateways to eternity. In Thrace, life and death, spirit and society existed in harmony. Across the eastern coasts lay Colchis, the land immortalized in the myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece. But legend often underestimates reality. The Colchians were metallurgists of unmatched skill, collecting gold from riverbeds using ingenious techniques, turning raw earth into treasure. They were also practitioners of medicine, astronomy, and early engineering, their innovations quietly seeping into Mediterranean knowledge. To the Greeks, Colchis seemed magical, but the Colchians were simply advanced, transforming natural resources into culture, economy, and story. Their queens and priestesses ruled with intelligence and authority, a testament to a society where knowledge and power were intertwined. These three civilizations did not exist in isolation. Trade routes connected Scythian steppes to Thracian valleys and Colchian ports to both. Ideas, technologies, and rituals flowed freely. Military tactics evolved alongside metallurgical techniques. Religious beliefs traveled with merchants. Art inspired music and architecture. They exchanged more than gold or grain. They exchanged civilization itself. Their innovations became the foundation for future empires, including the Greeks and, later, the Romans, who borrowed strategies, art forms, and myths, often forgetting the source. Yet history minimized them. Scythians became nomads. Thracians became barbarians. Colchians were reduced to myth. But beneath those labels lies truth. These were architects of culture, inventors of strategy, and pioneers of spiritual thought. Their lives demonstrated that warfare, art, and religion are inseparable threads in the tapestry of civilization. Rome may have conquered lands, but it inherited the ideas and techniques first cultivated by these peoples. Long before the Roman eagle soared, the Black Sea was alive with human genius. Its peoples taught lessons in mobility, artistry, and spirituality. They proved that power can be rooted in connection, that culture is forged in both battle and belief, and that civilization is never the work of one empire alone. The Scythians, Thracians, and Colchians were not lost. Their legacy is alive in the strategies, stories, and symbols that echo through every society that followed. And so, from steppes, valleys, and coasts, the first architects of empire rise again, not as myths, but as the living blueprint of human achievement. Their voices, once silenced by conquest and ignorance, whisper across time, reminding us that the foundations of civilization were laid long before Rome took the stage. History loves a hero, a founder, a single shining name. For centuries, textbooks told us that civilization began with Greece, reached perfection in Rome, and flowed outward like a sacred gift. But what if that story was incomplete? What if the brilliance of Greece and Rome was borrowed, reshaped, and repackaged from civilizations that thrived long before their marble columns kissed the sun? The truth lies along the forgotten coasts of the Black Sea, where empires of Scythians, Thracians, and Colchians had already written the first chapters of human advancement. When Greek explorers first sailed north into the Black Sea, they did not arrive in an empty land. Thriving cities dotted the coastline: Olbia, Sinope, Apollonia, centers of trade, culture, and diplomacy. Merchants exchanged grain, furs, gold, and ideas across networks that connected Europe, Asia, and Africa. These were sophisticated societies, each with unique rituals, technologies, and governance. The Greeks, ever eager to learn and conquer, saw opportunity. They called it Euxeinos Pontos, the hospitable sea, but the hospitality belonged to those who had lived there for centuries, shaping trade and knowledge. The Greeks learned, borrowed, and transformed. Scythian horsemanship became the blueprint for cavalry. Thracian music and ecstatic ritual festivals became the foundation of Greek theater and Dionysian cults. Colchian mastery of metallurgy and river gold techniques inspired early coinage and weapon making. Myths we consider purely Greek, Jason and the Golden Fleece, the adventures of heroes in distant lands, were retellings of real trade missions and cultural exchange, stories of civilizations older than Athens. Civilization, it turns out, was not invented in Greece. It was inherited, but inheritance comes with erasure. Greek colonies rebranded what they absorbed. Thracian gods were renamed and placed atop Olympus. Scythian innovations became Greek military strategies. Colchian knowledge of medicine, astronomy, and metallurgy was absorbed into Greek philosophy, credited to Athenian ingenuity rather than centuries of study along the Black Sea. This was not merely imitation, it was a rewriting of history. The hands that shaped civilization were anonymized, their names erased, leaving only the echo of Greek and, later, Roman credit. Then came Rome, the master imitator and amplifier. The Romans admired Greece, yet their ambitions extended further. They conquered lands, plundered treasures, and assimilated knowledge, building an empire whose vastness overshadowed the very civilizations it drew from. Greek trade networks along the Black Sea were incorporated into Roman economic routes. Steppe cavalry tactics learned from the Scythians informed Roman cavalry formations. Even Roman religious festivals borrowed from Thracian rites, reinterpreted through the lens of Latin mythology. Every artifact, strategy, and ritual that survived Rome's rise bore the fingerprints of earlier empires, yet the credit was rarely given. Rome's conquest was twofold: physical and narrative. Where armies could not reach, Roman historiographers and poets extended their reach, rewriting stories, suppressing origins, and presenting conquest as creation. The Black Sea, once a cradle of innovation, was recast as a frontier, the edge of the civilized world. Greek colonies were remembered as outposts of Hellenic expansion rather than continuations of indigenous culture. Scythians became mythic nomads. Thracians, untamed barbarians. Colchians, a fabled land rather than a thriving civilization. Civilization itself was redefined through the lens of conquest. Yet beneath Rome's marble and Greek rhetoric, evidence remained. Archaeologists uncover Scythian bows, Thracian lyres, and Colchian gold that predate any Greek or Roman analog. Cities, tombs, and ritual sites whisper a different story: that human genius does not arise in isolation, that progress is communal, iterative, and often miscredited. Civilization is a relay, passed across seas, mountains, and generations, shaped by many hands, and remembered selectively. The lesson of the Black Sea empires is clear. Greece and Rome did not invent culture, law, or strategy. They inherited it. The foundation of Western civilization was laid in places history long ignored. The myths, the artifacts, the innovations of these peoples endure quietly beneath textbooks and museum labels, waiting for the world to remember. Civilization, therefore, is not a single narrative. It is a network of connections, a tapestry woven from the wisdom, struggle, and creativity of countless peoples. Greece and Rome may have drawn the world's attention, but they did not write the first chapter. That honor belongs to the forgotten empires along the Black Sea, whose ideas, innovations, and stories continue to shape the world, even when the world has forgotten their names. For centuries, history was written not by the conquered, nor the creators, but by the conquerors. The pen, wielded by empire, became a weapon as sharp as any sword. In the age of European colonial expansion, memory itself was claimed, curated, and censored. Scholars sought a narrative that justified domination, that civilization began with Greece, was perfected by Rome, and ultimately flowed into Europe. Everything else, the thriving kingdoms of the Black Sea, the ingenuity of the Scythians, Thracians, and Colchians, became footnotes, myths, or shadows. Memory was erased, and with it, the origins of human achievement were misplaced. By the 18th and 19th centuries, when archaeologists began uncovering tombs, artifacts, and cities around the Black Sea, evidence of complex civilizations challenged the dominant narrative. Advanced metallurgy, intricate art, trade networks spanning continents, all spoke of societies that predated classical Greece and Rome. Yet admitting this would undermine centuries of European self-mythology. To maintain the illusion, scholars reclassified discoveries. Scythians became nomadic warriors, Thracians, barbarians, Colchians, legendary, their accomplishments quietly folded into the myths of others. Civilization was rewritten to fit empire, not truth. This erasure was not merely accidental, it was deliberate. By portraying the Black Sea peoples as outsiders or primitives, European scholars could claim the mantle of progress and discovery. The rest of the world became an object lesson, lands to be civilized, histories to be rewritten, treasures to be plundered. The Black Sea, once a hub of trade, art, and culture, was transformed into a frontier, a blank canvas upon which colonial narratives could be painted. Yet truth has a way of surviving silence. In the 20th century, new discoveries began to unravel the constructed narrative. Soviet archaeologists unearthed Scythian burial mounds filled with gold ornaments of unparalleled craftsmanship, showing sophisticated metallurgy and spiritual symbolism. Thracian tombs revealed murals and artifacts that suggested highly organized society, advanced religious thought, and artistry that rivaled Greece. In Colchis, studies confirmed ancient gold mining techniques described in the myth of the Golden Fleece, proving that legend was rooted in real technology and culture. Each finding whispered, "We existed, we mattered, we were first." Modern science and technology accelerated this revelation. DNA analysis traced connections between Black Sea peoples, North Africa, and the Near East, confirming centuries of migration and trade that shaped civilizations long before the rise of Europe's empires. Satellite mapping uncovered submerged cities beneath the Black Sea, revealing urban planning and infrastructure that rivaled classical hubs. Even digital humanities projects allowed scholars and local communities to recreate lost settlements, giving new life to long-forgotten cultures. The reclamation of Black Sea history was not only archaeological, it was ethical and cultural. Museums that had long displayed artifacts as trophies began confronting their colonial legacies. Exhibitions now feature voices from descendant communities, restoring ownership and context to objects that were once stolen or misrepresented. Repatriation became more than politics. It became an act of justice, a way to reconcile the past and honor those silenced by centuries of imperial storytelling. But erasure still lingers. Many textbooks continue to minimize the Black Sea's influence. Western curricula rarely acknowledge that Roman cavalry techniques borrowed from Scythian horsemanship, or that Greek festivals inherited Thracian rituals. Colchian metallurgy and astronomical knowledge remain footnotes if mentioned at all. The story of civilization remains incomplete, not because evidence is lacking, but because truth challenges comfort and authority. Yet resistance continues. Independent scholars, filmmakers, digital creators, and academics from Africa, the Caucasus, and Eastern Europe are reconstructing the narrative piece by piece. They remind the world that history is not linear, nor owned by any one empire, race, or region. Civilization is collective, a tapestry of knowledge. Art and faith pass through countless hands. Across continents and through generations, the Black Sea empires, once silenced by conquest and colonial narratives, are rising again. Scythia, Thrace, Colchis, these are no longer shadows or myths. Their innovations, stories, and wisdom are reclaiming their place at the foundation of history. They teach a profound lesson that power does not only belong to those who conquer, legacy belongs to those who create, connect, and endure. And so, beneath the soil, in archives, in genetic code, and across digital reconstructions, the forgotten voices of the Black Sea speak once more. The civilizations that empire tried to erase are remembered not only for what they built, but for the light they brought to the world. A light that no narrative, no conquest, and no centuries of silence can fully extinguish. For centuries, the empires of the Black Sea lay hidden beneath layers of dust, politics, and imposed narratives. Maps erased them, textbooks ignored them, and empires built over them claimed their stories as their own. Yet truth, as it always does, refuses to remain silent. The forgotten kingdoms of Scythia, Thrace, and Colchis began to speak again, not in whispers, but in discoveries, in evidence, in the revival of culture that had been buried for millennia. The rediscovery began quietly. A broken sword emerged from a farmer's field in Bulgaria. Pottery shards etched with mysterious symbols were unearthed in Georgia. Murals, long hidden behind crumbling monastery walls, revealed scenes of daily life, ritual, and ceremony. Each fragment challenged the accepted narrative. These civilizations were not marginal. They were central, complex, and influential. The evidence refused to fit the Eurocentric story, demanding recognition. Archaeologists and historians from the region, scholars from Georgia, Turkey, Ukraine, and beyond, became the new custodians of truth. They traced trade networks that reached from Nubia to the Caucasus, following rivers, roads, and coastlines that had connected people long before Europe's rise. Jewelry designs matched those in the Nile Delta and Sahel, suggesting cultural exchange on a scale previously unimagined. The Black Sea was not a distant periphery. It was a hub, a heart of connectivity, and a crucible of early civilization. Gold torques, once labeled as barbarian trinkets, were reclassified as masterpieces of metallurgy. Scythian burial mounds revealed equality between men and women, warriors and priestesses lying side by side, honored equally in death. Thracian temples, aligned with celestial events, demonstrated advanced mathematics and astronomy centuries before Pythagoras. In Colchis, archaeologists confirmed the gold filtering techniques behind the myth of the Golden Fleece, proving that legend was grounded in technological mastery, not fantasy. Rediscovery was not only scientific, it was cultural. Nations long marginalized by colonial and imperial histories began reclaiming their past. Museums, long dominated by Western narratives, began including local voices. The British Museum, the Hermitage, and other institutions faced pressure to return artifacts or at least contextualize them properly. Curators from descendant communities began telling the history on their own terms, restoring identity, honor, and memory to civilizations that had been silenced. Modern technology amplified these efforts. DNA studies connected Black Sea peoples to North Africa and the Near East, confirming ancient migrations, trade, and cultural blending. Satellite imagery revealed buried cities beneath the silt of the Black Sea, long forgotten but structurally sophisticated. Digital reconstruction breathed life into lost settlements, allowing streets, temples, and harbors to shimmer once again in virtual sunlight. Social media, podcasts, and online documentaries turned obscure academic findings into global narratives, giving these civilizations a voice louder than ever before. With every new discovery, the walls of the old narrative cracked further. The myth that civilization began solely with Greece or Rome collapsed under the weight of evidence. Black Sea societies were not Europe's shadows. They were the architects of the foundations that would later be inherited. Their knowledge of trade, metallurgy, astronomy, governance, and spirituality flowed across borders and centuries, shaping the world in ways often overlooked. Perhaps the greatest rediscovery was philosophical. Civilization, it became clear, was never the creation of one empire, one race, or one culture. It was shared, a cumulative inheritance passed from hand to hand, sea to sea, generation to generation. The Black Sea empires remind us that progress is communal, and that the story of humanity is richer and more interconnected than any single narrative can capture. Today, Scythia, Thrace, and Colchis are no longer footnotes. They are living legacies, rising from centuries of silence. Scholars, artists, and storytellers ensure that these empires are remembered not only for what they achieved, but for the enduring lessons they impart. Creativity cannot be confined, knowledge cannot be erased, and truth, though buried, always finds a way to emerge. The Black Sea, once a forgotten heart of civilization, now pulses again with memory, culture, and recognition. The lands, the artifacts, and the stories that empires tried to suppress are reclaiming their place. And in that reclamation lies a powerful truth. The past does not belong solely to conquerors. It belongs to humanity. As the world listens anew, the voices of the forgotten empires rise from stone, soil, and sea, whispering not only who we were, but who we still are. The story of the Black Sea is no longer buried. It is alive, vibrant, and remembered. And for the first time in centuries, the world is finally hearing it. Beneath the restless waves of the Black Sea, echoes of forgotten empires still resonate. Kingdoms that once connected continents, traded knowledge, and carried ideas across oceans. Their story does not end in dust-covered ruins or museum halls. It flows outward, tracing a line back to the heart of Africa. Long before Rome, long before Greece, long before the pages of Western history were written, the currents of trade, art, and wisdom began in Africa, in Nubia, Kush, and the great civilizations along the Nile. From there, rivers carried gold, stories, and innovation northward, feeding the wealth and spirit of the Black Sea empires. Scythia, Thrace, Colchis, these were not isolated outposts. They were part of a vast network that spanned continents, inheriting knowledge and life from Africa's first societies. The myths, technologies, and rituals of these northern kingdoms were not created in a vacuum. They were extensions of human ingenuity that began in Africa's cradle. Civilization did not radiate from Rome. It spiraled outward from Africa, touching the shores of the Black Sea and beyond. And now, after centuries of erasure, the truth is rising. Archaeologists uncover artifacts, DNA reveals migrations, digital reconstructions rebuild cities, and storytellers amplify voices once silenced. The Black Sea empires are no longer lost. They are living proof that humanity's brilliance was never confined to one place or people. History isn't what they told you, but it's what they tried to hide, from Africa's golden rivers to the forgotten shores of the Black Sea. The truth still pulses beneath the soil. We are the heirs of empires silenced, the children of civilizations erased. We are remembering, and in remembering we rise.